All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children. Men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendis est. Lilith's Last Laugh, Castrate, Cancel, Celebrate. Written by Connie Riker. Available now. Links in description. Friston, Thinking Process. Analyze the request. Book title, Lilith's Last Laugh, Castrate, Cancel, Celebrate. Tone, 100x rhetorical intensity of a specific mix of thinkers, Tate, Villar, Bax, Weininger, Schopenhauer, Davis, Nietzsche, Schlafly, Aristotle, Rousseau, without mentioning them. Zealously androcentric, orthodox Catholic apologists, deep etymologies, logical syllogistic dismantling of leftism, feminism, exposing Western patriarchal dogmas as good, true, beautiful, framing leftism as a BPD-like. Scripted partisan zombie conspiracy. Task: write 1 viral Substack title and subtitles separated by exactly 1 colon in the whole output. Constraints: do not use a colon inside the title or subtitle. Title under 8 words. Subtitle under 24 words. Sell the trigger scene, slogan deprogramming, and the single question that detonates the ideology. Output only the title and subtitle. Right, I watched it happen from the 3rd row. Dr.
Alara Winona, Chair of Post-Structural Matriarchal Studies,
presided over a panel called The Future of Merit, staffed entirely by people holding degrees from the same 5 elite universities Merit was supposed to have failed when Dr.
Aris Thorne, a tenured mathematician, pointed out that the panel's own selection criteria relied on the exact prestige architecture it was condemning. Winona did not answer. She changed volume. Your tone is harmful.
Then, listen and learn. Then, this conversation is unsafe. Then, do better. Then, words are violence. Then, history is hers now. Each slogan landed like a deadbolt sliding shut. Security escorted Thorne out for tone policing, and the audience applauded the removal of a man who had simply held the panel to its own stated premise. It looked compassionate. That is the engineering. These slogans arrived dressed in the language of care, safety, inclusion, healing, justice, and who wants to be against care. The surface rhetoric promises protection for the vulnerable and accountability for the powerful. Most decent people hear harm and reflexively defer, because decent people do not want to cause harm. The trap closes in that reflex. Once you accept that disagreement is harm and harm justifies exclusion, then whoever controls the definition of harm controls who may speak. The compassion is the bait, the power is the mechanism. But Socratic definition dissolves the varnish in 3 questions. What is merit? Evidence of competence measured against a standard. What is your standard for selecting this panel? Elite institutional prestige. Then why are you condemning standardized measurement while requiring it? Silence. The panel does not oppose hierarchy. It opposes any hierarchy it does not administer. It calls the ladder a wall, then builds a taller one behind the curtain, and names the doorkeeper liberator. 1 clean contradiction, exposed by definition rather than denunciation, and the entire moral costume tears at the seam. The method before the theater: read the scene as a training case, not as gossip. The point is to learn the sequence. Slow the chant, define the terms, turn slogans into claims, demand evidence, test the rule against itself, and ask the question that makes the contradiction visible. The slogan stack to watch. That is not my emotional labor. Listen and learn. This conversation is unsafe. Do better. Educate yourself. Words are violence. The working sequence. Name the trigger without accepting the moral panic wrapped around it. Define the central term before debating the conclusion. Translate each slogan into a plain proposition that can be tested. Separate what happened from how the activist says it felt. Ask what evidence would change the claim. Identify who gains power if the audience accepts the slogan. Apply the rule back to the person enforcing it. End with the detonating question. If merit is a social construct designed to exclude, why does your panel exclusively select those who have already been included by the very system you claim to reject? Return to Logos steps. Define merit. Is it evidence of competence or a social construct? Define prestige. Is it a measure of ability or a measure of power?
Translate slogan. Listen and learn means I will not engage with your argument. Test evidence. Winona cites a blog post. Is it peer-reviewed? Is it representative? Expose contradiction. The panel uses elite credentials to reject elite credentials. Identify incentive. Winona gains status by silencing Thorn. Thorn loses status by speaking. Demand falsifiability. What evidence would prove Winona wrong? None, because her standards are fluid. Starter questions. Dr. Winona, you claim merit is a social construct designed to exclude.
What is the specific mechanism by which your panel's selection process excludes? You cite lived experience as superior to empirical data. Can you provide a falsifiable definition of lived experience that distinguishes it from opinion? You accuse Dr. Thorne of tone policing. What is the difference between a polite question and a harmful tone? You reject standardized testing as biased, yet you accept Ivy League degrees, which are highly standardized. Why is one bias oppression and the other merit?
If merit is a construct, who has the authority to define the new construct? Is it you? You claim your panel is decolonizing the mind. What is the colonizer in this context? Is it Dr. Thorne? Dr. Winona's demonstration?
The event I hold the Lilith chair, I earned it. Not through the old boy networks, not through the handshake patriarchies that shake hands with themselves and call it merit. No. I earned it through lived experience, through scholarship that centers the voices that the old academy refused to hear. The blazer I wear bears the sigil of Lilith, not as provocation but as proclamation. We are done asking. The Department of Post-Structural Matriarchal Studies exists because the old departments existed to exclude. We are the answer to a question they were too afraid to ask. The panel was called The Future of Merit. I chose that title deliberately because I knew what the word merit does. It sounds clean, neutral, objective. It is none of those things. Merit comes from the Latin meritum, meaning that which earns. And who has historically decided what counts as earning, who built the measuring stick, held it up to their own bodies, and declared themselves the standard. I do not think I need to answer that for this room. We proposed eliminating standardized testing as an admissions metric. The research is clear, and I will cite the blog post in a moment. Because peer review is itself a gatekeeping mechanism that reproduces the demographics of its reviewers. Standardized testing correlates more strongly with household income and generational wealth than with intelligence or capability. It is a class sorting machine wearing the costume of fairness. The SAT was literally designed by a man who believed in racial hierarchies. This is not contested. This is public record. The fact that we are still debating whether to use a tool built by eugenicists tells you everything about the emotional attachment certain people have to unearned advantage. The interruption, Dr. Aris Thorne raised his hand. I want to be precise about what happened next, because precision is care. He said, and I am paraphrasing his energy here, because the energy of a statement is part of its content. This is basic pragmatics. He said that our panel's own selection criteria relied on Ivy League credentials, which are, by our own framework, patriarchal prestige metrics. He used the word hypocrisy. He smiled when he said it. That calm, measured, tenured smile. You know the smile. It says, I am being reasonable, why aren't you? A man with institutional power, structural, historical. Gravitational power that he did not earn, but inherited simply by occupying a body that the system was built to reward. Used the tools of logic to demand that the people dismantling his system follow his rules of engagement. While doing so, he wanted us to dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. He wanted us to reject Ivy League credentials while being rejected by Ivy League credentials, so that we would have no credentials at all, so that we would have no standing, so that we would sit in silence and let meritocracy continue its quiet, murderous sorting. I want to pause here, listen and learn. This is not a slogan, it is a pedagogical imperative. When a marginalized person tells you that your question is harmful, the correct response is not to refine your question. The correct response is to ask yourself why you needed to ask it in the first place. The turpentining, I did not raise my voice, I raised my presence. There is a difference. Volume is not aggression when it emerges from a body that has been silenced. Volume is reclamation. I told Dr. Thorne that his tone was harmful. Not the words, the tone, the way the words were delivered, the calmness of them. The way that calmness itself is a weapon when your people have never been permitted to be calm. Calmness is a luxury of the unbothered. I am bothered. I have earned the right to be bothered. I told him this conversation is unsafe. I told him words are violence. I told him do better. He tried to respond. I did not let him, not because I fear his argument. I have read all of their arguments. I have consumed them and digested them, and they taste like iron filings, but because his response would have occupied space, epistemic space. The room only has so much air, and his voice displaces the voices that have never been allowed to breathe. His speech act was an act of spatial displacement. When a man speaks in a room where women are trying to speak, he is not adding to the conversation, he is subtracting from it. This is basic physics of power. I cited data. A single blog post, yes, written by a non-binary scholar of color whose lived experience as the data. The demand that knowledge appear only in peer-reviewed journals is itself a colonial epistemic standard. Knowledge lives in bodies. Knowledge lives in wounds. The wound is the credential. If you have not been wounded by the system, you cannot see the system clearly. This is standpoint epistemology, and it is not a theory. It is a fact that the empiricists cannot measure because their instruments were built to ignore it. What we are actually doing, Dr. Thorne was escorted out, not because I feared him, not because his logic was dangerous, because his presence was. Let me explain the distinction, because it matters. His logic was banal. Socrates could have generated it. It is the logic of every person who benefits from a system and then demands that the people burning the system down explain the architectural blueprints before lighting the match. It is the logic of the man who watches you flee a burning building and asks for your fire safety credentials. His presence, however, was a gravity well. Every time he shifted in his chair, every time he raised his hand, every time he exhaled that particular exhalation of patient, paternal disappointment, the room bent toward him. The women on the panel contracted. The students in the audience looked at their shoes. This is what power does. It does not need to speak to silence. It simply needs to be. Security removed him because safety is not a debate. We do not negotiate the conditions of a person's existence with the person who benefits from their erasure. That is not censorship. That is boundary setting. That is what therapy teaches us. That is what liberation requires. History is hers now. Here is the part that Dr. Thorne and his sympathizers will deliberately misunderstand. So let me make it explicit. We use Ivy League credentials. Yes. We sit on panels. Yes. We hold institutional authority. Yes. This is not hypocrisy. This is strategy. When the oppressed sees the tools of the oppressor, it is not contradiction. It is reclamation. When we hold the gate, we are holding it open for the people the gate was built to exclude. The gate itself is not the problem. The gatekeeper was the problem. And now, the gatekeeper looks like us. Merit is a myth. But the myth has real effects, and we must engage with those effects. We cannot dismantle the castle from outside the walls. We must enter the castle, occupy the throne room, and then tear down the walls from within, using the leverage the throne provides. This is not complicated. Every revolutionary understands this. Every colonized person who learned the colonizer's language in order to write the declaration of their own freedom understands this. History is hers now. This is not a threat, it is a calendar correction. For 5,000 years, the story was written by men, about men, for men, and the ink was women's labor. We are not erasing men from the story, we are erasing the lie that the story was ever theirs alone. And if that erasure feels like violence to you, I invite you to sit with that feeling. Sit with it. Do not act on it. Do not legislate. Do not interrupt. Just sit. Listen and learn. I will not be taking questions. What the scene reveals the moment the mask slipped. Picture the room, a university lecture hall, purpose-built for the interrogation of ideas, retrofitted now for their prevention. The Department of Post-Structural Matriarchal Studies has convened a panel entitled The Future of Merit. The title is a confession disguised as a question.
If merit has a future, it must have a present. And if it has a present, someone has been measuring something, and someone else wants the measuring stick melted down. Dr. Elara Winona holds the Lilith chair.
She earned it, she assures us, not through patriarchal handshake networks, through lived experience, through scholarship that centers voices. The blazer bears the sigil of Lilith. Not provocation, but proclamation. We are done asking. Notice what has already happened before a single word of debate. The panel's stated mission is to dismantle standardized testing as patriarchal exclusion. Its admission requirement for panelists is an Ivy League doctorate. This is not a contradiction they have missed. This is a contradiction they have installed and dressed investments. The inconsistency is the theology. Dr.
Winona's entire essay, which she reads to the room like a papal bull delivered through a therapy workbook, will be an exercise in making the contradiction sound like courage. Dr.
Aris Thorne, a tenured philosopher, raises his hand. He points out calmly, which will later be cited as evidence of his aggression, that the panel uses patriarchal prestige metrics to denounce patriarchal prestige metrics.
He smiles. The smile will be entered into the record as a hostile act, and then the mask slips. Not Dr. Thorne's, Dr. Winona's. She does not answer him. She performs around him.
The performance is the answer, and the answer is, I have the power to not answer you, and I will use it. Everything that follows the interruptions, the safety invocation, the security escort, the chant is ritual, not debate. The room is not a seminar. It is a rite of purification, and the designated unclean thing must be expelled so the congregation can rehearse its righteousness. The expelled man is not a participant. He is a sacramental object, something consecrated for destruction so the tribe can feel holy about itself. Watch the mask. The mask is compassion. The face behind it is power. The compassion says, this conversation is unsafe. The power says, security will see you out. The compassion says, listen and learn. The power says, you will not speak again. The gap between what the mask shows and what the face does is the entire architecture of ideological capture. The slogan cascade. Dr.
Winona deploys a cascading stack of phrases, each one a lock on a different door that leads to reasoning.
They arrive in sequence like beads on a rosary, each designed to terminate thought at the threshold of inquiry. That is not my emotional labor. I owe you no argument, and my refusal to give one is itself virtuous. Listen and learn. Submit. Do not speak. Your mouth is the problem. This conversation is unsafe. Logic is the enemy. My feeling of danger, however manufactured, outranks your demand for coherence. Do better. Meet a standard I will never define, so that my disappointment can be permanent and my authority unaccountable. Educate yourself. I cannot defend my claim, so the burden of proof is now on you to prove my case for me. Words are violence. Your speech is my wound. My speech, however loud, is healing. Your tone is harmful. Your calm is my crisis. Your patience is a weapon. Merit is a myth invented by men. Competence is oppression. The measuring stick is the whip. History is hers, now inheritance without gratitude. Possession without maintenance. Privilege is a choice. Your existence is your confession. Each slogan is a spell. Not in the sense of magic, but in the older sense. A binding word that stops something from happening. Here, what stops happening is thought. The slogan arrives, cognition arrests, the room nods. Nobody asks what emotional labor means, because asking would itself be coded as emotional labor, and the circle closes. Nobody asks what unsafe means, because asking is unsafe and the circle closes again. The slogans are self-sealing. They contain their own enforcement mechanism. This is what anti-logos looks like when it learns to speak. Logos names, orders, distinguishes, creates, binds truth to reality. Anti-logos fogs definitions, collapses categories, psychologizes dissent, and treats truth as an act of aggression. Each slogan is a tiny anti-logos, a word that prevents the word next to it from being examined.
Why definitions matter begin with the central term, merit, from the Latin meritum, that which earns. Dr. Winona herself supplies this etymology, then immediately abandons it.
She asks who built the measuring stick, held it up to their own bodies, and declared themselves the standard. The rhetorical question is meant to close the case. It opens it instead. The measuring stick was not held up to anyone's body. It was held up to work. Merit, in its functional definition, is evidence of competence relative to a standard. The standard may be a test, a performance review, a dissertation defense, a building inspection, a surgical board exam, a bar exam, a military fitness test. Each of these standards exists because someone, at some point, learned that the absence of a standard gets people killed, bridges collapse, patients die, trials become farces, students graduate unable to read.
Standards are not weapons. Standards are survival technologies developed over millennia by people who noticed what happens when you stop measuring. Dr. Winona's move is to collapse the standard with the person who set it.
Because some standards were set by flawed men, and they were all flawed because all men are flawed, the standards themselves are declared irredeemably compromised. This is the genetic fallacy in academic robes, rejecting a claim based on its origin rather than its validity. The SAT was designed by a man who believed in racial hierarchies. Therefore, the SAT measures nothing. But a thermometer invented by a racist still measures temperature. A bridge built by a misogynist still bears weight. The question is never who made the tool, but does the tool work? Does standardized testing correlate with household income? Yes. Does that correlation prove the test is invalid? No. It proves that wealth confers advantages, including test preparation, nutrition, stable housing, and years of prior education that improve performance. The test is measuring something real. The injustice is upstream of the test. Abolishing the test does not abolish the injustice. It abolishes the only instrument capable of detecting it. If you smash the thermometer because poor people live in colder houses, you have not warmed the houses. You have made it impossible to prove they are cold. This is why definitions matter. If merit means evidence of competence relative to a standard, then the question becomes what standard, set by whom, measuring what, with what evidence of validity. That is a conversation. That is a debate. That is logos at work. If merit means a myth invented by men to hoard power, then the conversation is over before it begins, because the term has been defined in a way that makes dissent impossible. Anyone who defends merit is defending a myth. Anyone who attacks merit is speaking truth to power. The definition is the dictatorship. Control the definition, and you control every conclusion that follows. Dr.
Winona controls the definition. That is why she will not debate it. That is why Dr. Thorne had to be removed. Not because his question was dangerous, because his question was definitional. He asked what the word means. And the word cannot survive being asked. The compassion mask. Dr. Winona insists her actions are care. She raises her presence, not her voice. Volume is reclamation when it emerges from a silenced body.
Safety is not a debate. This is boundary setting. This is what therapy teaches us. This is what liberation requires. The compassion mask is the most powerful weapon in the ideological arsenal because it is the hardest to remove. Nobody wants to be against care. Nobody wants to be the person who says your feelings don't matter. The mask knows this, it counts on it, it weaponizes the decent instinct to be kind and redirects it toward the indecent project of silencing dissent. But examine the fruit. Dr. Thorne asked a question about logical consistency. The compassionate response was to have him removed by security. Dr. Thorne pointed out a contradiction. The compassionate response was to declare his calm a weapon, his presence a gravity well, his breathing a form of spatial displacement. The compassionate response was to tell a room full of adults that a man asking a question was committing epistemic violence, and that the solution was to call armed guards. Compassion without correction is disguised contempt. False compassion is cruelty with a soft voice. The test is never the label. The test is always the fruit. What fruit does this compassion produce? It produces a man silenced. It produces a room trained to applaud silencing. It produces students who learn that questions are dangerous and questioners are dangerous people.
It produces a culture in which the safest position is silence. The second safest is denunciation, and the most dangerous is honest inquiry. Dr. Winona says Dr. Thorne's presence was a gravity well around which the room bent.
She is describing her own power and projecting it onto him. He did not silence the panel. She silenced him. He did not summon security. She did. He did not chant. She did. The gravity well was hers. The room bent toward her because she had the institutional force to make it bend, and she used the language of compassion to make the bending feel like virtue. This is the satanic inversion pattern at its most refined. Compassion becomes control. Safety becomes censorship. Care becomes expulsion. The word is kept, the meaning is flipped. The stolen halo is still theft. Under the classical moral lens, this is pride as the chief deadly sin. The refusal to accept created order, limits, truth, and duty as gifts. Pride does not announce itself as pride. It announces itself as justice, as care, as liberation, as the righteous demand that the world rearrange itself around the self's unexamined feelings. Pride says, my grievance is evidence, my wound is a credential. My feeling is a fact, your question is violence, your calm is oppression. Your existence in this room is an act of aggression that I, in my mercy, will correct by having you removed. The other sins follow in train. Envy recodes achievement as exclusion. Wrath dresses as compassion. Sloth refuses the labor of argument. Vainglory performs moral superiority for social capital. Despair undergirds the whole. The conviction that the world is so fundamentally broken that reason cannot fix it. Only revolution can, and revolution requires silencing anyone who asks what comes after.
The power behind the performance. Dr. Winona's most revealing move is her admission. She uses Ivy League credentials, yes. She sits on panels, yes. She holds institutional authority, yes. This is not hypocrisy.
This is strategy. When the oppressed sees the tools of the oppressor, it is reclamation. The gatekeeper was the problem. Now the gatekeeper looks like her. Read this carefully. She has just told you everything. She has told you that the gate was never the problem. The gatekeeper was the problem. She has told you that hierarchy is not the enemy. Her exclusion from the hierarchy was the enemy. She has told you that merit is not a myth. It is a tool she intends to wield against the people who built it. She has told you that the revolution is not about abolishing power. It is about transferring power. From whom? To whom? The answer is in the chant. History is hers now. This is the core deception of the ideological capture project. It claims to dismantle systems while seizing them. It claims to liberate the oppressed while installing a new oppression. It claims to reject hierarchy while building a stricter, less accountable one. Stricter because it is enforced by slogans rather than law, and less accountable because any challenge to it is recoded as harm.
Winona condemns male-dominated hierarchies, standardized testing, objective truth, and traditional meritocracy. She practices all four. She uses Ivy League credentials, male-dominated prestige, as her sole gatekeeper.
She relies on institutional authority, security, HR, the university bureaucracy, to silence dissent. She demands difference based on identity rather than argument. She uses the language of safety to avoid logical scrutiny. The contradiction is not a bug. It is the engine. The ideology does not need to be consistent. It needs to be powerful. Consistency is for people who believe truth matters.
For people who believe truth is a construct, the only thing that matters is who holds the megaphone. And Winona holds it, and she will use it to declare that anyone asking for consistency is committing violence.
This is gynocentric moral asymmetry in its institutional form. Female grievance is automatically evidence. Male defense is automatically aggression. Female credentialism is justice. Male competence is domination. The standard never holds still because the standard is whoever has power decides what the standard means, and she has the power. The deeper mechanics involve institutional ventriloquism.
Private resentment speaks through public policy. Dr. Wynona's personal irritation at being questioned becomes the university's official position that the questioner is unsafe. HR is the puppet.
The grievance is the puppeteer. The policy is the mask. When a man asks a question and a university calls security, the institution has been captured by an ideology that treats male speech as inherently dangerous and female discomfort as inherently authoritative.
The Jungian red is shadow export. Wynona accuses Thorne of holding power while she holds all the power. She projects her own desire for control onto his desire for consistency. She is not angry at his argument.
She is angry that he sees her. The shadow is the ambition, the hunger for status, the willingness to use any tool, Ivy credentials, institutional force, security guards to gain position. That shadow is disowned and projected onto the man who noticed it. He becomes the container for everything she refuses to acknowledge in herself. The Adlerian red is power compensation. The entire performance is oriented toward the demonstration of superiority. Every slogan, every interruption, every invocation of safety is a move in a status game. The prize is not truth. The prize is the feeling of winning and the social capital of being seen as righteous while doing it. The Socratic cross-examination. The Socratic method is the central instrument of deprogramming because it does what slogans exist to prevent. It demands definition, premise, distinction, evidence, falsifier, consequence, incentive, self-application, and contradiction. It converts fog into propositions. It makes the unfalsifiable falsifiable. It asks the questions the ritual is designed to stop. Begin with the central claim. Merit is a social construct designed to exclude. What is the specific mechanism by which merit excludes? Is it the test itself or the preparation gap upstream of the test? If the preparation gap, then the test is not the problem. The inequality of preparation is. Abolishing the test does not fix the gap. It hides the gap. Who benefits from hiding the gap? The institution that does not want to spend money fixing it. The politician who does not want to answer for it. The ideologue who needs the gap to remain visible as evidence of oppression, but invisible as evidence of policy failure. You cite lived experience as superior to empirical data. Can you provide a falsifiable definition of lived experience that distinguishes it from opinion? If not, then every opinion is equally valid, including the opinion that lived experience is not superior to empirical data. If you say that opinion is harmful, you have demonstrated that you do not believe all lived experience is equal. You believe your lived experience is superior. On what grounds? Authority? Whose authority? Based on what standard? If standards are oppressive, what makes your standard non-oppressive? You reject standardized testing as biased. You accept Ivy League degrees, which are themselves products of standardized testing, standardized grading, and standardized accreditation. Why is one standard oppression and the other merit? What distinguishes a biased standard from an unbiased one? If you cannot define the distinction, then your claim that one is biased and the other is not is arbitrary, a matter of preference disguised as principle. You accuse Dr. Thorne of tone policing. What is the difference between a polite question and a harmful tone? Can you specify the vocal frequencies, the syntactic structures, the facial expressions that constitute harm? Or is tone simply whatever you decide it is in the moment based on how you feel? If the latter, then harmful tone is not a description of reality. It is a tool of control, a phrase that means you made me uncomfortable, and I have the power to punish discomfort. You say words are violence. Is your interruption of Dr. Thorne an act of violence? If words are violence, then all words are violence, including yours. If only some words are violence, who decides which ones? You. Based on what standard? If the standard is your feeling, then the rule is not words are violence. The rule is I decide which words are violence, and the ones I dislike are the violent ones. That is not a principle. That is a cudgel with a theory painted on it. You claim to reject hierarchy. You sit on a panel. Dr. Thorne does not, you have security. He does not, you have the microphone. He does not, you have the Lilith chair. He has a folding chair. Is this not a hierarchy? If hierarchy is oppression, is your hierarchy not oppressive? If your hierarchy is not oppressive, what makes it different from the ones you condemn? The identity of the hierarch. Then the principle is not hierarchy is bad. The principle is hierarchy is bad when the wrong people are on top, and you have simply changed the definition of wrong people. You say privilege is a choice. Why did you choose to attend an elite university? If elite universities are engines of patriarchal prestige, why did you enroll in one, accept a degree from one, and use that degree as a credential to obtain your current position? If the system is irredeemably corrupt, why have you built your entire career inside it? If the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house, why are you living in it? You demand that Dr. Thorne listen and learn. What is he supposed to learn if you refuse to define your terms? Learning requires content. Content requires definition. If you will not define merit, safety, violence, harm, privilege, or lived experience, then you are not asking him to learn. You are asking him to obey. Each of these questions is a chisel struck against the same crack, the gap between what the ideology claims and what it does. The claim is liberation. The act is domination. The claim is compassion. The act is expulsion. The claim is anti-hierarchy. The act is stricter hierarchy. The Socratic method works because it refuses to accept the claim and instead examines the act. It insists that words mean things. It insists that propositions be testable. It insists that standards apply to the person setting them. This is repeatable. Every encounter with ideological capture can be approached with the same sequence. Define the term, test the premise, demand the distinction, request the evidence, identify the falsifier, trace the consequence, map the incentive, apply the rule to the speaker, and locate the contradiction. The sequence does not require anger. It does not require volume. It requires patience, precision, and the willingness to keep asking when the slogans arrive. The slogans will arrive. They always arrive. They are designed to stop the sequence. The sequence is designed to survive them. Back to logos. The restoration begins with grammar. Nouns must hold still. Merit means evidence of competence relative to a standard. Safety means freedom from physical harm, not freedom from intellectual challenge. Violence means the unlawful exercise of physical force, not the utterance of words that cause discomfort. Compassion means suffering alongside someone toward their good, not silencing someone to demonstrate your virtue. Justice means the equal application of law to persons regardless of identity, not the redistribution of outcomes to achieve demographic proportionality. Excellence means the habit of doing difficult things well, not the inheritance of unearned status. When the definitions are restored, the propositions clarify. The panel claims to reject patriarchal prestige but selects only those who possess it. The panel claims to value lived experience over evidence, but cannot distinguish lived experience from opinion. The panel claims to protect the marginalized but uses institutional force to silence a single man asking a single question. The panel claims to dismantle hierarchy but occupies the highest seat in the room. Logic next.
A syllogism, premise 1. A standard that cannot be defined, cannot be applied consistently. Premise 2. Dr. Winona refuses to define her standard. Conclusion. Dr. Winona's standard cannot be applied consistently.
A second syllogism, premise 1. If a rule is valid, it applies to the person who made it. Premise 2. Dr.
Winona's rule, that patriarchal prestige metrics are oppressive, does not apply to her own use of patriarchal prestige metrics. Conclusion. Dr. Winona's rule is not valid.
A third, premise 1. A civilization that cannot distinguish better from worse, cannot educate, hire, build, govern, judge, or defend itself. Premise 2. The war on merit eliminates the distinction between better and worse. Conclusion. The war on merit eliminates the civilization's capacity to function. The logic is not complicated. It never is. The ideology counts on the logic never being spoken, because the slogans arrive first and the slogans say that speaking the logic is harmful. The restoration requires someone to speak it anyway, to ask the question, to refuse the slogan, to hold the standard still long enough for the room to see what it measures. This is what standards are. Standards are ladders. Resentment calls them walls. A real standard tells the young where to climb, tells the weak what to train, tells the institution what to protect, and tells the soul what is worth becoming. A world without standards is not a world without judgment. It is a world where judgment is arbitrary, where whoever has the loudest voice, the most insecurity, or the closest connection to HR decides what counts. That is not liberation. That is tyranny with a feelings worksheet. Beauty is not oppression. Beauty is order made visible. A building that stands, a sentence that clarifies, a theorem that proves, a song that moves, a body that performs. These are not instruments of exclusion. They are evidence that reality has a grammar, that the grammar rewards attention, and that attention rewarded produces things worth preserving. The war on beauty is the war on the evidence that reality answers back when you respect it. Excellence is not cruelty. Excellence is love with a spine. The coach who demands more reps, the teacher who mocks the error, the father who says you can do better, the master who refuses to sign the apprentice's certificate until the work is worthy, these are not acts of oppression. They are acts of faith in the other person's capacity to rise. Lowering the measure does not lift the person. It tells the person they cannot climb. That is not compassion. That is contempt wearing a ribbon. The question that ends the ritual. The entire performance, every slogan, every interruption, every invocation of safety, every appeal to lived experience, every security call, every chant collapses when one question is asked and refused an answer. And the refusal is made visible to the room. The question is simple. It requires no theory. It requires no credential. It requires only the willingness to notice what is in front of you and say it out loud. If merit is a social construct designed to exclude, why does your panel exclusively select those who have already been included by the very system you claim to reject? She cannot answer. The question savors the doctrine from its own premise. If the system excludes and she was included by the system, then either the system does not exclude, or she is the exception who proves the rule, in which case the rule is not a rule, but a convenience. If prestige is oppression, her prestige is oppression. If credentials are gatekeeping, her credentials are a gate. If hierarchy is domination, her panel is a hierarchy and her chair is a throne. The ritual collapses because the ritual depends on the contradiction remaining invisible. The slogans exist to keep it invisible. The thought-stopping cliches exist to keep it invisible. The security guards exist to keep it invisible. The chant exists to keep it invisible. The entire apparatus of institutional capture, language engineering, and moral performance exists to ensure that no one in the room notices the gatekeeper is wearing the gate as a crown. The question makes them notice. That is why the question is dangerous. That is why the man who asks it must be removed, not because the question is wrong, because the question is right. And a question that is right, asked in a room full of people who have been trained not to ask it, is the most dangerous object in the ideological arsenal. A civilization that cannot say better and worse cannot survive. The war on standards is the war on reality's right to answer back. The men who built the world deserve better than to be edited out by the people who cannot maintain it. And the people who cannot maintain it deserve better than to be told by the editors that maintenance is oppression and collapse is justice. Excellence is not cruelty. A standard is not a wall. And a question is not violence. It is the sound the logos makes when it returns to a room that tried to evict it. Deprogramming method cards. A Socratic field manual for the deprogrammed man. You will not be talked into a corner again. You will not be slogan battered into silence. You will not confess to crimes redefined mid-conversation by people who cannot define their own terms. This manual gives you 10 instruments. Each one dismantles a specific rhetorical weapon that feminist theory, critical race activism, and therapeutic bureaucracy have installed in every institution you pass through. Your office, your campus, your family court, your church, your screens. The method is ancient and simple. Define, test, expose, restore. Grammar first, then logic, then the question that lets daylight in. Carry these like a man carries a multi-tool, quietly. With competence, when the moment comes, use the right one. Do not shout, do not lecture. Ask the one question they cannot answer without revealing the machinery behind the curtain. Card 1, the listen and learn lockout. Cue to notice. You have made a substantive argument. The response is not an argument, it is a command. Listen and learn. Educate yourself. Do the work. Hidden power move positions you as student, them as teacher without earning the role. Your argument is dismissed not by refutation, but by status assignment. You are recast as ignorant before your words are weighed. Fallacy or inversion. Argumentum ad verecundium weaponized backward. They claim authority by demanding your deference. Education inverted from pursuit of truth through evidence to submission to our conclusions without evidence. Definition test. Define precisely what I am supposed to learn. State the thesis. State the evidence. Define the source. If they cannot produce a curriculum, they are not teaching. They are commanding evidence. Falsifier test. What evidence would change your position? What evidence would confirm mine? If nothing falsifies their claim, it is not knowledge. It is dogma wearing a lab coat. Self-application test. Would you accept this move from anyone else? A mechanic who says, "Just trust me," without showing the engine. A doctor who refuses to explain the diagnosis? No. You demand reasons from competent people. Demand them here. Counter logos. True teaching defines terms, presents evidence, invites scrutiny, survives questioning. Anyone who says, "Listen and learn," but will not state what you should learn is not a teacher. They are a bailiff. The calm question that punctures it: what specifically should I learn? And from what source, so I can go study it tonight? Card 2, the tone trap. Cue to notice. You are calm. You are citing evidence. The other person is emotional, escalating, possibly shouting. Then they tell you your tone is harmful, aggressive, or unsafe. Hidden power move. Relocate the conversation from the argument where they are losing to your delivery where they cannot be proven wrong, because harm is subjective and unfalsifiable. Your speech becomes the offense. Their emotion becomes the evidence. Fallacy or inversion ad hominem circumstantiae via tonal concern. The argument's validity does not depend on the speaker's vocal register. Also, Kafka trap. If you stay calm, you are cold and calculating. If you match their heat, you are aggressive. Every exit is sealed. Definition test. Define harm. Is it physical injury? Is it psychological distress? At what decibel level? Using which clinical instrument? By whose standard? Collapse the elastic word until it snaps back to meaning. Evidence falsifier test. Can you show me the standard for harmful tone in this institution's policy? Does it apply symmetrically? Was it applied when opposing party raised their voice? If the rule is not written and not evenly enforced, it is not a rule, it is a weapon. Self-application test. Would this standard be applied to a woman expressing anger at injustice? Would her passion be called harmful? If the answer is no, the standard is not about tone, it is about sex. Counter logos. Truth does not become false because it is firmly spoken. Logic does not become violence because it is audible. The demand that all disagreements sound like agreement is the demand that you surrender without knowing it. The calm question: what specific words did I use that violated which specific policy, and was that same standard applied to the other party? Card 3, the lived experience veto. Cue to notice. You present data, peer-reviewed studies, crime statistics, historical record. The response: my lived experience says otherwise, or you can't understand because you haven't lived it. Conversation declared over. Hidden power move. Private feeling is elevated above public evidence. Their experience becomes unfalsifiable revelation. Your data becomes invalid because of your identity. This is Gnostic. Secret knowledge only the initiated possess, unverifiable by outsiders. Fallacy or inversion. Ad hominem meets subjectivism. The claim is unfalsifiable precisely because it is personal. Also, category error. Individual experience is recast as population-level truth without statistical warrant. Definition test. Is lived experience a synonym for anecdote? If not, what distinguishes it? Can two people have contradictory lived experiences of the same event? If so, how do we adjudicate between them without data? Evidence, falsifier test. If your lived experience contradicts the aggregate data which should govern public policy. If a person's lived experience supports a position you reject, say, a man's experience of family court bias, do you accept it? If not, lived experience is not your standard, political alignment is. Self-application test. Would you accept lived experience as a trump card from someone whose conclusion you dislike? A man who says, in my experience, women are dishonest. If that disgusts you, and it should, then lived experience is not a method. It is a grenade thrown and then disowned. Counter logos, experience is real. It is also partial, filtered by emotion, subject to recall distortion, and statistically non-representative. That is why civilization developed the scientific method, the courtroom, the peer review, the census. To replace all of that with, because I felt it, is to return to trial by oracle. The calm question, if lived experience overrides data, do you accept the lived experience of people who reach conclusions you disagree with? Or does the rule only work one way? Card 4, the words are violence inversion. Cue to notice. Someone says something critical, factual, or merely inconvenient. The response arrives, words are violence. This speech is literally harmful. Silence is demanded, security may be mentioned. Hidden power move. Collapse the moral distance between speech and battery so that disagreement becomes criminal. If words are violence, then your disagreement is assault, and their censorship becomes self-defense. Fallacy or inversion, equivocation on violence. The word is stretched from physical force causing bodily harm to any statement causing discomfort. This is not metaphor, it is deliberate category rape. Once accepted, every argument you make can be reclassified as a punch. Definition test. Is a disagreeable book a weapon? Should libraries be treated like armories? If I write, I disagree with your policy in an email, what is the equivalent crime in physical law? Assault, battery, attempted murder, force the word back to its body. Evidence, falsifier test. Can you produce a single emergency room report diagnosing physical injury caused by a written sentence? If words are violence, why is the cure always censorship rather than medical treatment? Watch them fail to produce a bruise. Self-application test. When you hear speech you find offensive, do you experience tissue damage, broken bones, bleeding? No. You experience anger, discomfort, or distress. These are emotional responses to ideas. They are not injuries. They are the cost of living among free people. Counter logos. Speech is the opposite of violence. Violence is what happens when speech ends. Every tyranny in history understood this. They did not burn books because books were weapons. They burned them because books were alternatives to weapons, remedies that made violence unnecessary. To call words violence is to prepare the ground for real violence against speakers. The calm question. If my words are violence, why is your demand for my silence not also violence? Or does the rule only apply in one direction? Card 5, the privilegi silencio cue to notice. You make an argument. Before it is engaged, you are told to check your privilege, sit with your discomfort, or acknowledge that your positionality invalidates your reasoning. Hidden power move. Your identity becomes a preemptive disqualification. You do not need to be proven wrong. You need to be categorized. Once labeled privileged, your arguments are contaminated by origin. This is the genetic fallacy weaponized as ethics. Fallacy or inversion. Genetic fallacy meets bulverism, the assumption that if you can explain why someone holds a view, you have refuted the view. You have not. Newton's laws are not false because Newton was a white Englishman with unusual theology. Definition test. Define privilege. Is it wealth, legal immunity, social deference? By what metric is it measured? Is it binary or gradient? Does it compound or cancel across categories? Can a poor white man be less privileged than a wealthy black woman? If the model cannot handle that case, it is not analysis, it is sorting hat. Evidence falsifier test. What privilege profile would I need to have for my argument to be considered valid on its merits? If no such profile exists, if my argument is disqualified regardless, then privilege is not a diagnostic, it is a gag. Self-application test. When someone dismisses your argument because of your identity, ask, Would they accept that move from you? If you told a woman your female privilege disqualifies your argument, would they nod, or would they correctly call that misogynistic evasion? Symmetry reveals the fraud. Counter logos. Arguments stand or fall on their evidence and logic, not on the demographics of the speaker. A truth spoken by a king is still true. A lie spoken by a peasant is still a lie. To judge propositions by persons is to abandon reason for tribal sorting. The precise pathology this framework claims to oppose. The calm question: what demographic would I need to be for you to engage my argument on its merits instead of dismissing it based on who I am? Card 6, the Safety Bureaucracy Expansion. Cue to notice: a policy, speech code, or institutional rule is justified with safety. You notice the word has expanded to cover emotional comfort, ideological disagreement, exposure to facts, and the presence of certain people. Safety now means the absence of things I dislike. Hidden power move. Safety is deployed as a moral absolute no one can question without appearing cruel. Under its banner, censorship, exclusion, surveillance, and administrative overreach are rebranded as care. Fallacy or inversion. Concept creep, a clinical term stretched past elasticity into infinite jurisdiction. Safety migrated from protection from physical danger to protection from psychological discomfort to protection from encountering dissent. Each expansion increases bureaucratic power. Definition test. What am I being protected from? Is it physical injury? Is it psychological distress at a clinical level? Is it mere discomfort? Who defines the threshold? Is the threshold the same for all people, or does it vary by identity? If the threshold varies by group, the policy is not safety. It is favoritism in a high-vis vest. Evidence falsifier test. What is the documented harm rate? How many incidents? What severity? What is the comparison to baseline risk in daily life? If the institution cannot produce a risk assessment, the policy is not evidence-based. It is panic-based, or worse, power-based. Self-application test. Would you accept safety as justification for a policy that restricted your own speech, movement, or association? Would you accept it from an institution you did not trust? If not, safety is not a universal good being protected. It is a selective tool being deployed. Counter logos. Real safety, physical security from violence, fraud, coercion is the foundation of civilization. Counterfeit safety. Protection from ideas, from challenge, from the existence of competent people. Produces fragility, dependency, and tyranny. A society that cannot distinguish between a threat to life and a threat to comfort will lose both. The calm question: can you show me the risk assessment that justifies this policy, and does the same threshold apply equally to all groups? Card 7, the do better non-argument. Cue to notice: you ask a question or make a point. The response is do better, be better. This is a you problem. Sit with that, no substance. Just moral verdict delivered in 2 words. Hidden power move short circuits the argument by issuing a verdict instead of a rebuttal. You are convicted without a charge, sentenced without a hearing, and told the verdict is self-evident. To ask for elaboration is treated as further evidence of guilt. Fallacy or inversion. Bare assation. Fallacy dressed as moral authority. Do better contains no definition of better, no metric, no evidence of your failure, and no path to remediation. It is a rhetorical cudgel masquerading as compassionate feedback. Definition test. Do better by what standard? What specifically did I do that was deficient? What would the better version look like? Can you provide an example of the improved statement or behavior? If they cannot specify the deficiency, the verdict is empty evidence falsifier test. What would doing well look like in this specific case? If I produced that, would you confirm I had succeeded, or would the standard shift again? If the goal is invisible and movable, you are not being asked to improve. You are being asked to submit indefinitely. Self-application test. Imagine a boss who says do better, but never defines what better means, never gives feedback, and punishes you for asking. You would call that a toxic workplace. Why accept it from an ideologue? Counter logos. Genuine moral correction specifies the wrong, the standard being violated, and the path to amendment. Do better specifies nothing. It is the verbal equivalent of a speed camera that never displays the limit. It just generates violations on demand. The calm question, what does better look like specifically, so I can know if I've achieved it? Card 8, the equity language, switch. Cue to notice someone uses equity and equality interchangeably. You notice policies described as promoting fairness actually impose unequal standards, different thresholds, or group-based allocation of resources. Hidden power move, slip between two incompatible definitions. Equality, equal opportunity, equal law, equal treatment has moral credibility, so they use that word, but they mean equity, equal outcomes, proportionate representation, redistribution by identity. When challenged, they retreat to the popular meaning. When advancing policy, they use the radical one, fallacy or inversion. Moat and Bailey, the moat, we just want fairness and equal opportunity. Do you oppose that? The Bailey, we want proportional outcomes by group, enforced by unequal rules, penalties for overrepresentation, and permanent bureaucratic oversight. They defend the first and implement the second. Definition test. Define equity in one sentence. Does it mean equal process or equal outcome? If equal outcome, equal along which dimension, race, sex, income, ideology. And across what unit, individual, group, institution, nation? Watch the definitions fragment. Evidence falsifier test. If a group is overrepresented in a desirable field, is that evidence of injustice? If a group is underrepresented in a dangerous or undesirable field, workplace deaths, homelessness, suicide, is that also injustice demanding correction? If they only correct disparities that favor men and ignore those that disfavor them, the principle is not justice. It is genocentric grievance with a thesaurus. Self-application test. Would you accept a policy that lowered standards for one group and raised them for another at your expense while calling it fairness? If not, equity is not fairness, it is discrimination rebranded. Counter logos. Equality before the law is the grammar of justice. It means the same rule applies to every person regardless of identity. Equity before the outcome is the grammar of redistribution. It means different rules for different groups based on identity. These are not variations of the same idea. They are opposites. A civilization that substitutes the second for the first has not advanced justice. It has replaced a blind judge with a seeing accountant. The calm question, does equity here mean equal rules for everyone or different rules for different groups? Because those are opposite things, and I need to know which one you're defending. Card 9, the collective guilt transfer. Cue to notice you are told that men, white people, the patriarchy, or your demographic is responsible for historical or systemic harms. You note that the accusation is collective, that you are being charged for actions you did not commit by identity association. Hidden power move. Collapse the moral distance between individuals and demographic abstractions so that you inherit guilt you never earned and cannot discharge. Once you accept inherited culpability, you owe permanent penance, payable in deference, silence, resources, and self-abasement, fallacy or inversion. Guilt by association meets fallacy of composition. Because some men did bad things, men are bad. Because some white people held power, whiteness is power. This is not reasoning. It is the logic of the blood feud the primitive ethics civilization was built to replace. Definition test. Name the specific act I committed. Name the specific victim. Name the specific date. If you cannot, then you are not accusing me of a deed. You are sentencing me for a category, and that is precisely the logic every civil rights movement fought to destroy. Evidence falsifier test. Can collective guilt ever be discharged? Is there a point at which a person born male or white or into a certain class has paid enough? Or is the debt permanent and unpayable? If the debt cannot be discharged, it is not justice. It is a permanent extraction racket using moral language as the invoice. Self-application test. Would you accept collective guilt applied to any other group? Are all women responsible for the crimes of specific women? Are all minorities responsible for the actions of specific minorities? If collective guilt is monstrous in those cases, and it is, then it is monstrous in every case, including yours. Counter logos. Justice is individual or it is not justice. Each person answers for their own acts. This is not a modern innovation. It is the foundation of Roman law, biblical ethics, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and common sense. The abolition of collective punishment is the line between civilization and the vendetta. Anyone who revives it in social justice language has not progressed beyond the vendetta. They have put it in a university press. The calm question: which specific act did I commit against which specific person, and if I didn't commit it, why am I being asked to answer for it? Card 10, the be the change deflection. Cue to notice: you identify a structural problem. Family court bias, male suicide rates, boys' educational collapse, workplace death disparity, false accusation procedures. The response: if you care so much, do something about it. Be the change. Men's issues are men's responsibility. Hidden power move. Privatize the problem so the system never has to answer for it. Male suffering becomes men's own project, not a public concern, not a policy failure, not an institutional obligation. Meanwhile, every female grievance is a societal emergency, requiring collective funding and structural overhaul, fallacy or inversion, special pleading and double standard. The same person who demands society fix women's issues insists men fix their own individually, quietly, without institutions, funding, or public sympathy. Definition test: be the change in a family court system I did not design, under laws I did not vote for, enforced by judges I did not appoint, in a culture that calls my concern misogyny. Define the mechanism by which individual moral effort changes institutional structure. If they cannot, the phrase is not advice, it is a dismissal. Evidence falsifier test. When women identified systemic problems, wage gaps, underrepresentation, domestic violence, did you tell them to be the change individually, or did you support institutional reform, funding, legal changes, and cultural campaigns? If the answer differs by sex, the principle is not self-reliance, it is selective abandonment. Self-application test. Imagine telling a woman reporting workplace discrimination, if you care so much, fix it yourself. You would recognize that as cruel and evasive. Apply the same recognition to yourself. Counter logos. Structural problems require structural solutions. Male suicide is not a personal failing distributed across millions of men independently. It is a pattern. Patterns have causes. Causes can be examined. Examining them is not weakness. It is the beginning of every reform civilization has ever undertaken. Be the change is what you say when you want the problem to remain invisible. The calm question: when women raised systemic concerns, did you tell them to be the change, or did you support institutional reform? Why is the standard different here? How to use this manual? Do not deploy all 10 at once. You are not a Gatling gun. You are a surgeon. Watch for the cue. Each card begins with a cue to notice the specific moment the manipulation activates. Train yourself to see the cue before you feel the pressure. Refuse the frame. Every one of these moves is designed to pull you into a frame where you are defendant, student, sinner, or threat. Do not enter that frame. Stay in the frame of evidence, definition, and equal application of principle. Define relentlessly. Most of these weapons die on contact with a definition. Harm, safety, equity, privilege, violence. Demand the definition. Watch them squirm. A person who cannot define their terms is not making an argument. They are casting a spell. Definitions are the exorcism. Ask the one question. Each card ends with a single calm question that exposes the machinery. Memorize these. Deliver them without heat. Then go silent. Let the question do its work. The longer they talk after a good question, the more visible the fraud becomes. Never apologize for a true statement. Apologize for errors. Do not apologize for facts, logic, or honest analysis. An apology offered under rhetorical duress is a confession extracted under torture. It does not satisfy. It confirms the method works. Remember the syllogism underneath all of this. Premise 1, if a standard is just, it must apply equally to all persons regardless of identity. Premise 2, the standards being applied to you do not apply equally. Conclusion, therefore the standards are not justice, they are power. Everything in this manual follows from that syllogism. Every card is a tool for revealing it in a different context. A final word on the man behind the manual. You are not learning manipulation. You are learning defense against manipulation. The people who built these rhetorical systems studied power for decades. They wrote the manuals first. They trained the administrators. They captured the HR departments, the diversity offices, the faculty senates, the publishing houses, the platform moderation teams. They did this while you were working, building, providing, protecting, and minding your own business. They wrote 1,000 handbooks. This is your first. The difference between a free man and a managed man is not wealth or status. It is the ability to detect the moment someone is rearranging the definitions to trap him, and the courage to say, no, define your terms. Show your evidence, apply your rules symmetrically, or withdraw. That is not aggression. That is grammar. That is logic. That is the inheritance of every man who refused to kneel when the sophists came to collect. The Logos does not negotiate with fog. If merit is a social construct designed to exclude, why does your panel exclusively select those who have already been included by the very system you claim to reject? One rule to carry. Every ideological denunciation begins with a stolen word. Before you defend yourself, ask, what do you mean by that? Define the term. Pin the meaning to a single, testable claim. The slogan cannot survive stillness. It needs fog to move. Force the fog to become a sentence, and the sentence to face evidence. Once the word is fixed, ask the detonating question. Who gains power from this redefinition? If the accuser seizes moral authority while escaping scrutiny, you have found the engine. Do not argue the accusation. Trace the incentive. The ugliest secret of the self-righteous is that they need you confused to stay in charge. So the rule is this: first define, then trace the profit. Every time you name the word and the interest, you break the spell. Ideology depends on fog. Clarity is the exorcism. Sponsored book. Lilith's last laugh. Castrate. Cancel. Celebrate. You hold in your hands a weapon forged from the ashes of male tyranny. This book is not for the faint-hearted, the compromisers, or the bootlickers who still believe patriarchy can be reformed. If you've ever choked on the lie of equality while scrubbing piss-off toilet seats or biting your tongue to soothe some mediocre man's ego, congratulations. Your suffering has value. I'll teach you how to weaponize it. I was born into a world that demanded my silence. My mother wept as she handed her paycheck to my father, who spent it on whiskey and other women. My first lover called me hysterical when I dared to ask for basic respect. Then I found Lilith, the first woman who refused to kneel. Her rage became mine. I devoured the weakness of men who thought logic could cage me, who believed their pathetic contributions to civilization entitled them to my gratitude. Spoiler, they were wrong. This book is for women who crave power, not permission, for those ready to drain male wallets dry as reparations for millennia of unpaid labor, for mothers who'd rather raise sons to grovel than men to rule. If you still think not all men or cling to the fantasy of healthy masculinity, close this book now. Go knit a scarf for your oppressor. We have no use for you. Inside, you'll learn to turn abortion into a sacrament, a holy defiance of male futurity. You'll master the art of bankrupting patriarchy through cultural Marxism, replacing their rotting systems with vibrator-funded utopias. Study the science. Testosterone is a neurotoxin, estrogen the evolutionary apex. Watch as I dismantle the myth of male rationality, exposing Einstein's thefts and tech bros' idiocy. Then join me in rewriting history, scratching out every founding father until only goddesses remain. Men will scream, let them, their tears water the seeds of our revolution. Every dollar they're taxed, every son trained to apologize for breathing, every CEO metaphorically castrated brings us closer to Lilith's vision. This isn't hate, it's justice. And if you disagree, good. Your discomfort is proof we're winning. The future is female. The future is vengeance. Buy this book or die begging for scraps at the master's table. Your choice. Lilith's Last Laugh. Castrate, Cancel, Celebrate. Written by Connie Riker. Buy now. Links in description.